Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Big Bros podcast. My name is Jeremy, and welcome if it's your first time joining us. I'm joined today by my lovely friend and co-host, Ilan. Ilan, how are you going, mate?
I could have been better, but I just had futsal before, and we got smashed 13-3 by what I believe are South Americans who have played professional soccer and have come to Australia to dominate the Melbourne futsal leagues because they were fantastic. And after trying to speak to them after and say, like, sure, you guys played professional, the bloke smiled at me and started speaking to me in Spanish. And I said, no comprende. But you know what? They were very lovely people. They were lovely.
South Americans speaking Spanish.
Yeah, well...
Portuguese, perhaps?
No, not at all. I think they were from Peru or Chile. Lovely people. Like, lovely guys we played against. Good sportsmanship from all of them.
But you got dominated.
Got dominated 13-3. Yeah, it wasn't our finest performance, but you know what? We move on. It was a good character building experience. And that's what we're about at Big Bros. We're all about having experiences that mold us and transform us into better versions of ourselves. So, without further ado, that's an excellent segue, I reckon.
I think so too.
We're going to be speaking about micro habits. Now, it sounds a bit self-explanatory, but we're going to explain the importance of it, the conceptual framework behind it, how to implement it. Now, it might sound a bit like a lecture, like a uni lecture, just by the way I described it, but it's not going to be. It's a very interesting topic, and it's very relatable, and I think the best way to explain micro habits is by turning it into practical examples. And a lot of the information presented here is inspired by the author James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits. Probably one of my favorite reads. I read it a couple of years ago, and I've tried to actively implement some of the principles there. And I thought, for those who haven't read his book and you've hopped on to and are currently listening to this potty, maybe you can take away some few things and maybe you can give that book a read. So, without further ado, Jeremy, define micro habits for us.
It's a bit of a trendy one, isn't it? Micro habits as well. It's something that I think I've only come to hear about probably in the last year or two, and really applicable to all of us in our 20s and perhaps even slightly younger. So what is a micro habit or micro habits? They're basically simple everyday behaviors that compound over time and can lead to bigger changes. So think small little incremental steps to get to that long-term goal or that achievement that you want to unlock and master one day. What are the steps you can put in place to get there? And it's really relatable to talk about this coming off the back of what we spoke about last week, being the arrival fallacy, where we encouraged people to not think of their big picture goal as what will instill long-term or fulfillment or some level of greater happiness in them. So coming into micro habits today allows us to think, okay, well, it's easy to say, be happy along the journey, but how can I actually actualize that? And micro habits is a fantastic way to actualize that happiness that we so often want to experience and explore on a journey to get to something greater one day. Because that's human. That's us being human. That's, we want to improve. We don't want to be stagnant. We don't want to be in the same place all the time. We want to work towards greater things, and micro habits are a fantastic way to get there. So why do you reckon it's so important?
Well, it's your little things as well, right? It's, I think a lot of times, just to answer your question, the reason it's important is because every day we make conscious decisions, whether it's implicit or explicit, and these are going to manifest in our physical, mental, and emotional well-being. When we start to become conscious and fully aware of these actions, that can play a pivotal role in where we actually devote and place our attention, right? So things like exercise, meditation, studying, the food choices you make, your self-talk, the decision to shower or not in the morning, the list goes on. These are all prime examples of micro habits that you tend to do every day. I hope you have good dental hygiene, because every day that you brush your teeth, that becomes, in a way, second nature. You wake up, you wash your face, and then you brush your teeth. It becomes habitual for you, correct?
Mate, I do it 4 times a day. I don't know about you. I mean, sometimes it's hard enough to stick to the twice a day policy, but
me personally,
I try to make it a bit more of a a macro habit for me.
It depends if I'm kissing my girlfriend or not, you know?
Goodness.
So if it's, it's the standard 2 brushes a day,
Yeah.
which is like a requirement, but, suppose I've
At
eaten
least
like...
brush your teeth twice a day.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
the bare minimum.
Oh, no shit. Of
Yeah.
course. Oh,
We hope everyone.
that's what dentists recommend, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's what I've been told from a young age. But, maybe I'll have a third, I'll brush my teeth again if I've had like a really, spicy, garlic infused meal,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But that's where the habit becomes ingrained. And then once you realize, or once you start implementing habits every day, they become second nature. It's also the whole idea of momentum.
Yeah.
So I want to ask, to our younger listeners who might be listening to us and thinking this might be a bit more of just like a lecture, almost uni style. It's not. But micro habits are really, really important for teenagers. Why is that?
Well, because as a teenager, you're going to be involved in school, and you're going to be involved in extracurricular activities and social events and a whole bunch of different things. So if there's one way you can make your life easier, it's by focusing on the little things that you can do in your day to make the macro things in your life a lot more manageable, right? So at a young age as well, in particular, our brains are so moldable. That's the one. They're so moldable. They're like a sponge. They can take in 1,000,001 different things. So if we can start instilling these micro habits and these fantastic little ways to navigate life's challenges at such a young age, you're going to be so much better and well prepared in the longer run once you get into university, once you get into working a full-time job potentially one day. If you start younger, you're going to be that more well prepared. And that's something that I would have loved to have heard about when I was younger in school still. I feel like there were maybe some things that I tried to do, whether it was just like the basics of like my studies whilst also still seeing my friends and things like that. But those things can also be broken down even further. And those were things that maybe I wasn't so aware of when I was younger, and why I would urge younger audience and younger people to start thinking about how they can actually navigate those things from a younger age.
Yeah, 100% agree. The whole idea of neurons firing together and wiring together, which in layman's terms is just the connections in your brain. Once you develop a new skill, you got, little connections in your brain that form. The more you do it, the stronger it becomes. When you're younger and as you said, your brain is far more moldable, well, it's much easier to implement a new task. One of the pitfalls I used to fall into a lot when I was younger was I would tell myself I can start this new habit or this new beneficial habit when I'm older, when I finish school. So, similar to the whole episode we had last week about I'll be happy when I do this, I'll be happy when I'm older, I'll be happy when I commence this. Funny thing though is when you're young, you can just get ahead and become so competitive in your skills when you decide to hone in on a skill or a micro habit, because you literally become that. You know how people say in order to become really good at something, you need to become that thing? They're not technically wrong. If I become a really good piano player or a guitar player or musician, and the reason I'm using music, or like you could use it in sport as well, the reason is because a part of your brain will literally develop skills. It will recognize that skill. So you literally have that skill execution wired into your brain. I think that's why people say you literally need to become that skill, because neurologically it becomes embedded inside of you. I think if you start that skill when you're younger, it's much easier, because they all, the whole adage of you can't teach an old dog new tricks. It's a cliche, but it's a cliche for a reason. It's a cliche because it is much, much more difficult to implement some sort of behavior change, or not even behavior change, but a new skill once you're older. There's a reason why we can speak and learn languages in the first few years of our life. We don't have to really learn too much. It's just we're in that environment. The reason I can speak Russian and English is because that's what I was exposed to when I was younger. If I decide to go and learn Spanish now so I can communicate with the lovely competitors that we played against tonight, it'd be much harder. Although I'd love to learn Spanish. But besides the point, I think making use and taking advantage of your brain whilst it's still developing. Sure, you might not know everything, but you can download a lot of new information and habits that is much more difficult to do once you're older.
And we're not saying to be a nerd about a task as a kid. And like, you know, if you want to become an engineer one day, you need to start being an engineer at the age of 17 years old, and you need to start implementing all the micro habits to become that. That's not what we're saying here. We're just kind of saying like, as a young person, you're a lot more moldable. So even if it's like small things that you want to get better in, like if it's like a sporting endeavor or even just socially, what are the little steps you can put in place to get there? You know, whether that's like, you know, if you want to become a little bit better socially, maybe making that micro habit of being that first person to say hello to someone when you see them, rather than waiting for them to say hello to you. That's a tiny little micro habit, but it can be a bloody big step. And that step can often compound into further big steps, because each micro habit kind of becomes like a snowball effect. And that's where we'll talk about compounding, because that's the beauty of micro habits after all, is that the task is quite small, but if you do it repeatedly, it'll compound into a much, much bigger thing. And eventually that's, you know, going to hopefully allow you to achieve that goal of becoming potentially more sociable. What do you reckon?
No, it's true. Everything you do in life has some sort of compound effect, for good or for bad. And this is where James Clear does a lot of, you know, his excellent work and all the way he's explained it. But the whole idea here is that with the compound effect is it's the principle of reaping huge rewards from a series of small tasks, small choices. The basic premise there is also that it rejects the idea that you can quick fix to everything. You know, you can get rich quickly. You can, you know, get into shape quickly. You can become academic quickly. You know, the things that are worth doing in life are going to take time, but small habits and small micro habits are the way to get you there, because they do exponentiate.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. And a clear example of this, he wrote in his article, he said that if an individual decides to implements to get 1% better every day, he will end up 37% better by the end of it. So no one might notice the 1%, but no one will miss a 37% improvement. It's a whole exponential effect. It's like a hockey stick, right? You start off slow, and then you just exponentially grow. Then you might ask, like, why is that the case? Well, it's not that you just get 1% better and then it adds on to it. It's like, you know, you're actually building onto what you've learned already. Your ability to become and input more skill at a certain task grows when you become more proficient at it. You know, have you ever had like a time, I'll ask you this, have you ever had a time where you've been really super consistent with something, and there's been times where it's like, it feels like it's plateauing, but you've just stuck through with it, and then out of nowhere, you just start yielding massive results? Does that ever happen for you?
Well, the one that I come back to often is just going to the gym simply. It just becomes a micro habit. Well, it was a micro habit, but now it just becomes part of life, and it's just a habit. It's just like brushing your teeth in the morning. I know that it's just a non-negotiable. Like, if I want to be mentally and physically well and healthy, that's something that I need to do in my life. And that's not to say that, like, if I don't do it, then I'm going to be down in the dumps and fall into the pits of despair. But ultimately, if I want to maximize or optimize rather how I'm feeling as a human in life, you're going to instill different micro habits, and going to the gym is one of those for me, and that compounds. And so that's a perfect example. Another one is even just making your bed in the morning. It's a very typical one that you hear about. A lot of people speak about. They encourage people to just make their bed in the morning, because why? It's the first thing that you would typically do. It's that first thing in the morning that you can decide to do or not to do, and it can set up your day for better or for worse. There's research behind that. If you make that bed in the morning, that's one thing you've already ticked off, and you're probably already like more alert, more aware, and ready to make other active decisions in your day, and you're more switched on essentially. So those little micro habits, if you can get into the habit essentially of doing them more often, it's going to compound into greater things for different areas in your life.
Well, what you've described there is two things I want to mention. First thing is the whole idea of compounding, which is, when I read Atomic Habits, he mentioned a really excellent example, because it can compound for better or for worse. The first one being is, let's think about the gym. Let's say you're developing abs at the gym, like you do, right? And you got that rippling six-pack.
I don't know about that one.
Let's suppose you got that rippling six-pack. Just play along with me, right?
Rippling six-pack. We can only dream, mate.
We can only dream. You have that rippling six-pack, but the last ab crunch that you did, or the last sit-up that you did before those abs became visible. It wasn't that last sit up that caused the rippling of those rippling 6-pack abs. Rather, it was the mountain of work of eating clean and going to the gym consistently. Unfortunately, it has a downside as well, in that the person who is a lifetime smoker and they develop a really poor illness, the last cigarette they smoke before they develop a really deadly form of malignant lung cancer, it's not that last cigarette that caused that, but it would be the years and the decades of smoking and damage to that lung that has exponentiated and compounded.
Exactly.
And you look at anything you do in life, you will see that there is some sort of there's always a consequence to every action. Just because action's small doesn't mean that it's not going to come and bite you on the ass or give you a really big reward at the end.
Exactly. And as humans, we are creatures of habit. That's what we are. We like sticking to schedules. We like being regimented. We're creatures of habit. We wake up in the morning, we might have our brekkie, or we might intermittently fast if that's a habit of yours. You have your lunch, you have your dinner, you work, you see your friends, you exercise, whatever it might be. We're creatures of habit. We like routine. So if we can just start by making those micro habits more healthy and in ways that optimize our life, you're going to be better for it in the long run, and especially if you start younger. So it begs the question, how do you actually start a micro habit? You want to go out there, you want to optimize. What are the things you need to consider to starting a micro habit? Because for some people, it might be really difficult, like the example I gave before about wanting to be a really sociable person, but you don't know how to get there, and I said, like, you can just start with saying hello firstly. These are still really massive steps. So if we break all that down and we don't even forget about the actions of it yet, what are the things to think about first to start initiating that micro habit?
We can go down a rabbit hole, but I think a really cool way of thinking about it is it comes down to 3 things. It comes down to the choices we make, the behaviors we make as a consequences of those choices, and the time. Those are the 3 things in that magical formula of compounding effects when we want to start implementing some sort of micro habit. Now,
so choices, talk to me.
We make around 35,000 decisions every day.
Really?
Now, most of those decisions are subconscious.
Yeah. Oh, of course.
They're going to be things like...
To clock up 35,000, they'd have to be.
Yeah, it's not going to be all conscious things, right? So becoming aware of the things you can become aware of. Because think about it this way. Your brain wants to conserve energy. It wants to be efficient. So it doesn't want to be thinking about things that it doesn't need to be. If it can be in default mode, it will be in default mode. What that means is you're not actively thinking about things you don't need to, and your energy can be allocated to things that
it needs to be allocated towards.
Yeah, exactly. It's out of necessity. But there's an argument to be made that if we can become more active with our choices and become more purposeful with it, that's going to drive our behavior.
Right.
And whilst making the right choice in life is important, implementing it and showing it in our life defines our behavior. And that all starts from the choices. From the road, so the road from words to action can be a slippery one. The amount of times that people say, let my actions do the talking.
Exactly.
It's true. It's a completely different echelon of difficulty to be able to actually implement something. But since most of our choices are automatic, chances are most of our behaviors are going to be automatic. So if we can become aware of those 2 things and say, how can we become more purposeful with it? And then the third point comes in, which is how much time is allotted to it.
Just how often you're doing it.
Yeah, so let's bring back the gym example, keep it a broadcast. That's all we talk about is the bloody gym and bench press.
Start off with the choice.
Yeah.
The choice being, are you going to go or not? Are you going to set out your clothes the night before to make sure you go?
Oh, you're just jumping ahead and I love it. But then the time allotted, how much, let's say you're going to give yourself 10 years to get into the best shape of your life. Because roughly speaking, that's probably enough time for someone to make a massive transformational change in their body, in their fitness, in their health and lifestyle. The time allotted there and what actually enables this compound effect is time. Something will not compound without time. And the one thing that's really cool about that is if you respect the fact that things can take time and that there aren't no long-term solutions, you can benefit so much from it.
And that's where we try to negate what you mentioned before about quick fixing approach. And that's the whole essence of micro habits, is acknowledging that these aren't quick fixes. These are small little steps that will compound again, we're repeating it, into much bigger and greater things. And it all starts with that first choice, which then goes into your behavior. And then with behavior and time, you will eventually and hopefully reach that goal of yours.
100%. So let's get practical, Jeremy. First thing we do, long-term goal is very daunting. So what do we do?
Well, we make short-term goals, right? And that's what the micro habits are. So why? Because it forces us to essentially just be specific, like break down the big macro achievements into things that are digestible into everyday life. And this can go for your work, for your social endeavors, for your school endeavors, even for your travel endeavors. Like if I want to travel and go overseas and book a Europe trip like every other basic person, me included, you're not going to go and book the ticket and just get there. I mean, you might, but like me being a regimented person, that's not what I'm going to do. I'm going to essentially try to break that down into, firstly, what's the first destination I want to get to? What's the accommodation I need to consider for being there? What are the things I want to do when I'm going to be there? How much money will I need to allow for myself to be there? You're breaking down these big things into digestible little things. And it's very easy to get overwhelmed at the big picture, but acknowledging that there are many smaller steps in place to get to that bigger picture is a lot more, not only is it a lot more advantageous for you in terms of your journey to get to that bigger picture and achievement, but it's a lot more comforting to know that there are little steps there, and all I need to do is focus on that first one. And yeah, it might take time, but that's the beauty of building a micro habit, because it'll eventually actualize into a macro habit, and that's how you ultimately achieve.
So what you've explained just there is probably a very plausible explanation for this Harvard business study that they did around 40, 50 years ago. They did a Harvard business study, revealed that 83% of people, it was about goal setting, by the way, just to give you context. They interviewed a bunch of business students and said, do you guys have any goals? 83% of the population don't keep or didn't have any goals.
Right.
Of the remainder, there was 14% who had goals, but they were unwritten. But then there were the remaining 3% that did have goals. Now, interestingly enough, the 3% weren't more likely to just get the goals. They were as 3 times better than the 14% when it came to not having actually written any of the goals. They were more likely to achieve it, essentially.
Just by writing it simply on paper, probably.
I apologize if I butchered that explanation, but it shows that just by writing out what you want to get done, it forces us to be specific. And it forces us to actually evaluate the systems we have in place to try and achieve that. And that's like the second part of getting practical with micro habits, is where you got to have a robust system that makes your behavior execution of those micro habits so much easier to explain. So that's things like removing distractions, unhelpful friends that don't actually want the best for you or don't want you to achieve
Key
those
point,
things.
isn't it?
Massive one. And look, we've spoken about it so much before, where it's like you want to be conscious of who you choose to surround yourself with, because by all means you might just become that average of those people. And if you're surrounding yourself with a bunch of unsupportive friends who don't want the best for you, well, you're going to end up being that friend to yourself who isn't supportive.
Exactly, because it's easy to try to think about those micro habits and try to actualize them. But, yes, we're creatures of habit, but we're also creatures of our environment, aren't we? So the 2 and 2 go together, and they're a delicate dance, because if one of those fails, then I reckon we can all essentially come crashing down. So I love the point about robust systems, because it really does encourage us to think about the environment we're in to then actualize those habits to become the best version of ourselves.
Correct. And if we really want to start learning and use some of our mental hacks to implement micro habits, an excellent point that was really spoken and elaborated pretty well by James Clear in his book Atomic Habits was the idea of habit stacking, which is the idea that in order to create a new habit or stick to something, we just stick it on top of something that we already do, right? Provide some really cool examples. So, for example, after I take off my work shoes, I will immediately change into my workout clothes. Suppose that's your micro habit that you want to implement, is going to gym. After I sit down to dinner, I will say one thing I'm grateful for that happened today.
Mm.
So say if your micro habit is wanting to practice gratitude.
Mm.
After I get into bed at night, I will give my partner a kiss. We laughed when we read this one.
It's just a cute one from Mr. Jimmy Clear, isn't it?
Yes. After I put on my running shoes, I will text a friend or family member where I am running and how long it will take. After I pour my morning cup of coffee, I will meditate for 60 seconds. We get the point. But there's something really common there, which is the first thing I do after I do said goal, which I've been doing for habitually,
However long.
habitually a long time. After I wake up, after I go to sleep, or rather after I get into bed, things that you do, implement a new thing that you can associate, because it's all to do with our psychology.
I love that.
It's why it's the same. The brain works with pure associations. We
Yeah.
associate things really well. So it's very interesting. And I think the reason this works so well is because of associations. For example, people who have really bad insomnia, one of the guidelines they get suggested is that if they can't sleep at night at 3 a.m. in the morning, in order to strengthen that association of bed and sleep, you get told, go outside of your bedroom, go to a dim light room, or maybe even sit in darkness perhaps.
Right.
Read a book, don't go on your phone, but don't be in your bedroom until you get that second wave of fatigue where you can fall asleep, because that's how our brains work. We work with association. So back to this point, if we're consistently doing something that we're used to and then putting in another task beside it,
it's a lot more manageable. And that's such a beautiful way to, again, break down the micro habit even further. And if I come back to that point where I mentioned at the start about, you want to optimize your ability to be more sociable, right? But you don't know how to actually do that. And I mentioned the point of, just making sure you're the first person to say hello to that person that you want to talk to. What's the thing that is a bit habitual that you might do before that? Maybe it's going into that homeroom classroom in the morning. If you're in school, you know that you're always going to walk into that homeroom classroom. You might naturally navigate towards sitting or standing next to the same amount of the people that you would normally sit or stand around in that homeroom classroom, right? So what can you do next time is make sure that you actively say hello first, essentially, right? And you can practice that on your friends, on your good friends, because if you instill that habit of being that first person to say hello, even if it is around your good friends, you're going to build so much confidence by just making sure that you're that first person to say hello. So you're going to naturally start to implement that when you speak to other people, right? So that habitual way of thinking, that habit stacking way of thinking is such a beautiful point.
It's great. And what I love about it as well is you can also tie in the fact that in order for something to become easy to do, we want to make it easy for us to actually do. So what I mean by that is Muhammad Ali had a really good quote once, which is the hardest thing about climbing a mountain isn't climbing the mountain itself, but it's the pebble in your shoe. You want to make your journey and your ability to achieve goals as frictionless as possible. So does that mean putting your workout clothes on your bed, near your bedside table, or having your running shoes right by your bedroom door as a cue that you don't need to go too far to implement that micro habit? So yeah, look, there's a ton of things we can learn from James Clear's book on atomic habits, but there's another thing that's really, really crucial to implementing and maintaining micro habits. And what are they?
Well, it's about actually monitoring and tracking your progress, just like anything. And this is something that, again, coming back to the gym, something that I love to implement is like actually writing what I'm doing down in a notebook. Not on my phone. I actually like getting the old pen and paper out on a notepad and writing down my progress. One, because it's just so much easier for me to see. It's so much easier for me to adapt. And it feels like you're getting something out of your brain and putting it onto something external, but in a physical form, right? So tracking your progress, tracking your achievements, making it an active effort to do that in your life for whatever micro habit it is. Say you want to start, like I said before, being more sociable, making an active effort to say hello to people to actualize that goal. Writing down if you did that today or what your conversation was. Maybe if your goal is to make your bed in the morning, write that one down. Maybe if your goal is to have a cold shower in the morning, write that one down. And it's not to say that, like, you know, if you do miss a day or whatever, then you're a failure, because that's not how life works. There's going to be days where we all miss out, but it's the culmination of the days that where we actually get the shit done that we want to get done that is going to bring that goal to fruition. It's not a linear thing, but if you compound it and you make the positive habits more often than not, it will have, you know, a nice trajectory and you'll get there. So writing it down is a great way to self-reflect and to evaluate your progress.
And you don't have to look too far. You don't have to look weeks in advance. You literally need to really simplify it. Win the day. Because if you win the day, you win enough days. You win enough days, you win the week. And if you win enough weeks, you win the year, and so forth.
And then you win life.
And you win life. And I think that's a really cool way to do it. It's why footy players always say, yeah, mate, we're taking one week at a time. Cliche, but cliches are cliches because they're true and they're timeless.
On that note, thank you for joining us, everyone. We hope you enjoyed. And if this episode speaks to you, if there's something you can take away from this and you found really valuable, share it with a friend, share it with someone that would find this interesting too, because the more we can spread these messages, the better we're all going to be for it.
For sure, guys. Hope you have a lovely rest of your Tuesday. See ya.
Bye.